for a certain period of time. All right. So when you read on down, that's why Paul was making analogies with Elijah, and telling them that, look, I'm the only prophet left. And the Lord said, no, I have reserved unto me 7,000 men that have not bowed the knee to Baal. So basically what Paul was telling them, look, just because Israel fell away doesn't mean that they're going to be done away with, because they're going to be brought back into the fold. So basically what he was talking to them Israelite foreigners, which were in Rome, and he was explaining that to them. Don't worry about that. So he used himself as an example. Then it says, I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? The Most High forbid, but rather through their fall salvation is come unto the Gentiles, which are the Israelite foreigners, for to provoke them to jealousy. Provoke who to jealousy? The Jews. It tells you, if you read Deuteronomy, the 32nd chapter, it tells you that the Lord is going to provoke you to jealousy by no people. And that whole chapter in Deuteronomy 32 is talking about Israelites. All right. It says, now if the fall of them be the riches of the world, meaning the world here is cosmos. So if the fall of the Jews, right, be the riches of the rest of the Israelites, of the world, that's the word there is cosmos, right, it be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them, the riches of the Gentiles, or the riches of the Israelite foreigners, how much more their fullness? Because they're going to be brought back in. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, they're going to be brought back into the fold. It was prophesied that they were going to be the first ones to receive salvation. After they received salvation, what happened? Then the Most High was going to bring in the Israelite foreigners, because Judah had to be brought in there first. Then the rest of the tribes fell in line. This is according to prophecy. It says, for I speak to you, Gentiles, Israelite foreigners, and as much as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, Israelite foreigners, I magnify mine office. And there's nowhere in the scriptures where it said that Paul was going to become the teacher, for lack of better words, to the heathens, to the other nations. It was talking about the Israelites. When you go back to Acts the 8th chapter, it was talking to the Lord. When the Lord came to Paul, basically the Lord set him up to be a teacher to bring back the Israelite foreigners that had fallen away. Because even Paul didn't really want to deal with them. He wanted to really teach the men that were brought up with him. That knew the law, so that way he knew that they knew the law. So all he had to do was go to the certain scriptures. In his mind, that's what he thought. He could go to certain scriptures and show him about Yahushua and how he was going to come and all that stuff, and he would be able to convince them that way. But dealing with the Israelite foreigners, he had to go and go about it in a different manner. He still used the scriptures, but he had to go about it in a different manner because they didn't know the laws. So he had to take baby steps with them, so to speak. So it says, if by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, and might save some of them, meaning the Jews. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, of the cosmos, which is the rest of the tribes coming back in, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? Why? Because Judah is the head tribe. Without the head, you can't have the rest of the body. You got to have the head in order for the rest of the body to function right. And Yahushua is Judah. So it says, for if the Most High is Judah. For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. The first fruit being Yahushua, being the Jews, right? And it says the lump is also holy, meaning that's the rest. That's the rest of the tribes. And if the root be holy, which is the Jews, beginning with Yahushua, so are the branches, meaning everything else that comes out of that tree is holy. Why? Because they're all one nation. Just some of them had to be cleaned up. It says, and if some of the branches be broken off, and thou being a wild olive tree. Now this is where they get confused at, being a wild olive tree. There's nowhere in the scriptures where it ever compared the other nations to an olive tree. Okay? Whether it was a wild olive tree, whether it was a olive tree, whether it was olive tree, just a crazy looking olive tree, it never refers to any of the nations as a wild olive tree or any type of olive tree. Only the Israelites. All right? You can read about that in Jeremiah the 11th chapter. It says, and if some of the branches be broken off, which is the Jews, and thou being a wild olive tree, the Israelite foreigners, were grafted in among them, and with them partakers of the root and fatness of the olive tree, Why? Because that the only people that's gonna really and Paul tells you in the same chapter. He tells you in the same chapter that only Israel is gonna be saved. All of Israel is gonna be saved. I don't care what the Jews saying that the Israelite foreigners are not going to be saved. That doesn't matter. The Israelite foreigners that were brought in that saw some of the Jews fall off say that those Jews are not going to be delivered. Look, it don't matter what you say, because the Most High is going to save all of Israel. Boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. Why? Because you're not Judah. You're from the other tribes. Thou wilt say then, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. This is the Israelite foreigners getting high-minded, you know. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off, and thou standest by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. For if the Most High spared not the natural branches, take heed, lest he also spare not thee. It says, behold, therefore the goodness and severity of the Most High, on them which fell, severity, but toward thee goodness, if thou continue in his goodness, otherwise thou also will be cut off. What did we read in Romans the 2nd chapter? Well, hold up. Romans the 2nd chapter, what did we read? Said that, for circumcision verily profiteth if thou keep the law, but if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. So what did Paul say? He said, behold therefore the goodness and severity of the Most High. What is the goodness? The Israelite foreigners being brought back into the fold. What is the severity? The word severe means to cut, sever. That's the Jews being cut off of the Most High. So look at both sides of what the Most High is doing. On them which fell, severity. But toward thee, goodness, if thou continue in his goodness, otherwise thou also shalt be cut off. Just like they fell off, you're going to fall off if you try to be high-minded. This is dealing with just only Israelites. It says, and they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in. For the Most High is able to graft them in again. For if thou wert cut out of the olive tree which is wild by nature, why? Because when you were brought up, you weren't brought up as an Israelite. You were brought up as a heathen, even though you're an Israelite. So it said, and thou, for if thou were cut out of the olive tree which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? Why? Because you had that was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. They didn't fall away at one time. They were there. They were keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. But the Lord did that to bring the Israelite foreigners back into the fold. It says, for I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceit, that blindness in part is happened to Israel, until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. Now they'll read this and they'll get confused, because there's another part of the scriptures where it says, it uses this term, the fullness of the Gentiles, in Luke, the 21st chapter, which is talking about the actual heathens. But in this particular verse, it's talking about the Israelite foreigners. Alright, so it said that blindness in part has happened to Israel. Why? Because they knew they were Israelites. They knew they were Jews, Judah, Benjamin, Levi. It says, until the fullness of the Gentiles be coming, meaning until the other Israelites that were to be brought out from among these other nations were brought back to the fold. So that blindness is only in part, because you had to be able to bring in the Israelites that were strange into the fold, so that you could have one stick as you go when you go back to Ezekiel the 37th chapter. It says, and so all Israel shall be saved, as it is written. So where the fuck is all these nations at? Where the hell is these different nations at that they're supposed to be a part of this? It's only dealing with Israel. So Paul made it clear. He said, look, the ones that knew they were Israelites, they fell away, and you that didn't know you were Israelites, you were brought back into the fold. And then what did it say here? And so all Israel shall be saved. Why? This is a mystery. And so all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. Why? Because you had the Jews that became ungodly. Why? Because they didn't believe that was the Messiah. And then you had the Israelite foreigners that became ungodly. Why? Because they were following the customs of the other nations. So now when the Lord came, he came for what? To cleanse all of them and bring them all to the fold, to turn away ungodliness from them. The Jews that they believe in him, and the Israelite foreigners that they be brought back into their fold. That's why Simeon told Mary that this child, which is Yahushua, was set for the fall and rise of many again in Israel. and I believe he said for a stumbling block unto the Gentiles or something to that effect, which is talking about the Israelite foreigners. All right. So now you understand what it means. Now you understand what it means here in 1 Kings the 8th chapter. Moreover, concerning the stranger that is not of thy people Israel, but cometh out of a far country for thy name's sake. If the case be that the word Nakaya is actually there, this is talking about an Israelite anyway, Israelite foreigner that became strange. You know, but if the case be that it's supposed to be a sojourner, then it's the same thing. All right. You know, so with that, you know, I hope you brothers learned something. And until the next time, I say shalom.